What's going on, everybody? So, there was a comment about uh, the topic of black shields from 30k to 40k, so I thought I'd go ahead and do that because it was a good idea and give my take on black shields 30k to 40k, starting with 40k because that's where we first got introduced to black shields. And from there, talk about the 30k counterparts, my viewpoints on them, and so forth, and share your thoughts on them in the comments section below. So, Black Shields first really came about in 40k for the Death Watch stuff, meaning the Death Watch is basically chamber mills of the Ordo Xenos, and therefore they're alien hunters. And typically, how that works is Space Marine chapters second their members to the Death Watch temporarily. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. The Ordo Xenos gets veteran Space Marines as their forces, so that's awesome. And the Space Marine chapters, if the Battle Brother survives and then returns to the chapter, brings with him a wealth of information for combating Xenos threats in the galaxy. That's typically how it works. What this means is there's a rapid influx of training and understanding that the Space Marines, veteran though they are, will go through to do things. And that's why they paint the armor black. Their chapter symbol and color is on one shoulder pad. They got that silver arm and shoulder pad to appease the machine spirit and all that on their other arm, and so on and so forth. But there are the occasional Space Marines that are permanent. Now, there is some stuff in the lore about how a particular Space Marine from a particular chapter could basically be a permanent member of the Death Watch for reasons, but every so often, and it's a rare thing, a Space Marine with no livery on his armor will show up to the Watch Fortresses and pledge his service fully to the Death Watch, and these are black shields. This can happen for a variety of reasons: redemption, banishment, destruction of a chapter gone rogue and seeking repentance and redemption for that happening, or what have you. Whatever the case is, they fight for the Imperium through the Ordo Xenos as a Death Watch permanent member. This is very beneficial because you can keep training that Space Marine to do things, and it'll have a really good innate understanding of the Death Watch. So it is worth basically not really asking too many questions. A Space Marine shows up, their loyalty is proven, they go in and they become members of the Death Watch permanently, and that's a black shield. And it's usually on a case-by-case individual basis. You're not going to get whole squads of this happening. Very rarely would you get more than 2 at a time, perhaps, I would think. I don't know. It's really up in the air for that. But it doesn't happen every day because the circumstances to make it happen are few, far between, and rare. Not every Battle Brother that survives the destruction of the chapter is going to go be a Black Shield. Some might try and rebuild their forces. Others will go out in death and glory. So it's a very few percentage, you could say, of that situation that will go to be Black Shields. But this is how it was introduced to us, and the Death Watch RPG lets you have some really interesting plot potential, and really was just a cool concept. So that's Death Watch in 40k, purely an Ordo Xenos Death Watch thing. Or Black Shields in 40k, I should say, purely an Ordo Xenos Death Watch thing. You could have some implications in armor style even that might set up for certain things. Like you could have their armor be very Blood Angel-esque in their Greco-Roman artisanship, and you could imply that it maybe was a Blood Angel chapter that was destroyed, some successor chapter that was destroyed, of which that Battle Brother came from. But again, no questions really asked. It's a black shield. All of the livery is gone. So cut to Black Shields in 30k, introduced to us by Forge World for the Horus Heresy series. And this is basically letting players build a DIY warband force during the Heresy time period, because Shattered Legions, by and large, they are forces of different legions, such as Isstvan 5 survivors, and they will, in most cases, have their livery still intact on their armor, so you have Salamanders mixed in with Raven Guard, mixed in with Iron Hands, and so forth, fighting together. Because, well, You can do that, or you can just have a Shattered Legionary Force of whatever. But they still belong, if you will, to a parent legion. The Black Shield forces in the Heresy are really open-ended. They can side with Horus even. They're not just loyalists like the Black Shields of 40k. They could be loyalists, they can be Horus siders, they can be a third piratical, that's not really, I guess, a word, but they can be a third allegiance force to themselves as corsairs and pirates, lashing out at both sides is trying to survive and eke out an existence on their own. And that's the setup, and while there is some interesting potential there, it feels a bit forced and purely there to let you build a DIY force however you want. Black Shields from the Heresy time period typically started off as having so much battle damage and soot and ash caked onto the armor that it obscures their insignias, and it then translated into Space Marines with no livery, fighting and doing their own thing. Some cases on an individual or squad basis, but then it also gravitated towards full-on warbands with ship support, armored support, and the like. So it became a choose-your-own-adventure style of Space Marine building potential in the Heresy via Forge World with the Black Shields. Interesting potential therein, and there are some examples of Black Shields from the Heresy that have some of their parent Legion colors still on them for heavy implications of things. Others wielding certain weapons with implications and so forth, or what Legion that might have come from, but all of them are not changed on a Space Marine individual level, but their armor is in different colors with symbols that maybe don't relate to anything, and a whole on warband name that is their own thing. You're basically building a company or a couple company size force, lore wise, that it's its own little DIY chapter, if you will, within the Legion time period. See, it's weird for me on two fronts because they'll never become Legion size, and that's fine, but that's not why it's weird. Really, it's weird for me because you have this concept already built into the Shattered Legionary Forces, but then they're building it again here, but letting you have your own color scheme and livery and all that. And B, the reason why it's weird to me is because this is the Heresy proper, anarchy is running amok, and it's not like Space Marine Legions are swelling their ranks enough to have things bleed off and be their own thing. It further leads to the ambiguity of exactly a Legion sizes during this time, and then you have these stragglers going off and doing their things at company level sometimes. It just feels weird. Whereas 40k, you could always say, well, this is a Space Marine chapter built in secret. This is a chapter that was built in secret. This is a chapter that was made millennia ago that was off doing its own thing and rarely communicates with the Imperium or what have you, right? There's a lot of ways you can shoehorn in anything you want in 40k, but the Heresy time period, it's not as easy, especially because outside of the Knight Errants for Malcador building the Inquisition and all that, the Legions were the Space Marine forces, and you only can have so much in terms of per Legion, and we can artificially inflate those numbers and retcons all we want, but even still, you got to factor in the concept of these warband style forces that don't all need to come from one Legion. Not at all. A Black Shield warband force in the Heresy can comprise multiple legions fighting together underneath a new banner, a new leader, a new color, and all that. It just, while it's interesting, it feels a little bit forced in there for the sake of, build what you want type of potential. And I always felt the Heresy wasn't meant to have that. The Heresy had 18 legions. This is your force. This is what you're doing. But if it attracts people who normally wouldn't be that interested, then so be it, I guess, if whatever floats your boat. To me, it just feels a bit forced. So those are Black Shields in 40k and in 30k. It's an interesting setup. 40k I like more. It's on an individual basis. It's a rare thing. It's a way you can personalize a Deathwatch kill team squad a little bit, and the RPG is a way to have some interesting plot potential. And in 30k, it's a way to get players, maybe don't want to collect one particular legionary force at all, but they like the time period and want to play in it. Well, now here's your chance in building your own little warband. Are they loyal to Horus? Are they loyal to the Emperor? Or are they seeking out to do their own thing because of both sides they're fed up with? The potential is there. Anyways, what are your thoughts on the Black Shields in 30k and 40k? Do you like one over the other? Do you not like either? Share it in the comment section below, and let's get the conversation going. Remember, Black Shields don't equate to, I mean, they are in the Death Watch, but the Death Watch does not mean it's all Black Shields. So just because you might not like Black Shields, or somebody might not like Black Shields in 40k, doesn't mean they don't like the Death Watch as a concept. You might not like the Death Watch as a concept as anyway, but they're not linked like that. It just happens to be any Black Shields in 40k are in the Death Watch. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for sticking through it, and until next time, take it easy.